Hey, folks, welcome back. John Kelly with the Law Enforcement Life Coach, Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. I've got Ernie Stevens with me today. Ernie Stevens. Yeah, that Ernie Stevens. Retired police officer, 28 years in the job, man, just doing some amazing work. He was one of the founding officers of San Antonio's mental health unit. And, we're going back some time. And he has just done so much with this mission. He is the main subject of an Emmy award-winning HBO documentary, Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. He's a national speaker, an author. He is doing so much for folks in crisis and so much to help the first responder be an effective resource to help these people and to help our own. So without further ado, man, Ernie Stevens, thanks for sitting down with us, brother.
John, thank you for having me. I truly was humbled when you reached out. And thank you for using your platform, to advance the conversations of mental health and officer wellness in the intersections of law enforcement and crisis calls. It's vitally important that we continue these conversations, and you doing so today just speaks volumes about your character and who you are.
Well, hey, listen, it's this mutual, listen, there's no shortage of problems, and therefore there has to be an increase, right, in people being involved in the solution. And man, you've been doing that since day one. So thank you. And so listen, for the listener, I mean, you're a big shot. And I say that in the nicest way. I mean, I don't know many people who are a part of a documentary or writing books that, people can, you have sports people that do this and do that, and that's great, but it doesn't matter. Their story doesn't matter because it's just fluff. It's nonsense. It's okay. You're an amazing athlete, or you did this, or you arrested 1,000 people, and who gives a shit, right? I mean, the work that you've been doing impacts lives. And I don't think that there's any greater calling. I mean, we're here to leave this place better than when we found it. And so tell the listener, if you would, Ernie, how this journey started. I know a little bit on how it started, but just for the listener that might not know, could you fill them in on how you got from where you started to us sitting down right now? And then obviously I've got a million questions for you.
All right, sure. Well, born and raised here in San Antonio, Texas, and not unlike many officers, you get into this line of work and this profession because you want to give back to your community in some way, shape, or form. You just really don't know what that's going to look like, and you really don't know the true expectations of this type of work. My parents owned a restaurant; their parents owned a restaurant. I think they were setting me and my brother up to run a restaurant, and I just didn't feel it. I saw them working themselves to death 7 days a week, and we never took a vacation. I was like, man, I want to do that. I can be a cop and have like days off. Yeah, right. That,
yeah, well,
again, false expectations.
Yeah, you didn't read the fine print, my friend.
Yeah, it was down there pretty at the bottom of the page for sure. So in 1992, I joined a police academy here in San Antonio and was hired by a smaller municipality called Terrell Hills. And it's one of those municipalities where there's Hollywood stars live there, San Antonio Spurs live there, smaller community, but very well off. And there were high expectations of the police officers, firefighters, the sanitation crew. I mean, you really had to do the extra, go the extra, and really be professional at all times, right? After spending 2.5 years there, one of my coworkers went on to San Antonio Police Department and said, hey, you should come over here. There's a lot more opportunity. The benefits are better. The pay is better. And I said, okay, I'll try, but if I don't make it, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. I'm living the dream right now. So in 1992, I was accepted into, or 1994, I was accepted into the academy for San Antonio Police Department, became the class president, graduated mid-year of 95. And like most officers, started out on patrol.
Right.
Did patrol for several years on the dog watch shift.
Right.
Which is, like all police officers tell you, that's where you learn to be a real cop, right?
Where everything
then
happens.
Then I bounced around to some specialized units. I was a field training officer for a little while, went to a DWI unit, a task force there for 3 years, went to a gang unit, went to a tactical response unit. And it was during that time, about 15 years on the department, that I got signed up to go to a crisis intervention training course on my day off. I didn't sign up for this class and I didn't want to go.
No, no
And
doubt, no doubt.
yeah, and it was when I came back to work that I was told, hey, report Monday to this church. You're going to school for a week. And part of me was happy because that meant I didn't have to work nights.
Yeah,
and I
man,
had
you're
a
back
weekend
on a
off.
9 to 5 now. Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
And I heard they were going to feed us. And so it was looking good on the surface. But then when I heard what the class was about how to interact with people with mental illness and de-escalate and learn all these different resources, I was checked out right there. I was like, you can take me off this list. That's not what I do.
Right.
But it was too late. My name had been turned into accounting and I went to the class. The class was a life-changing experience for me. It was one of those classes where, unlike going to rifle school or bicycle school, the fun and sexy stuff, this one involved a lot of feelings.
Yeah,
This
right.
one, it involved a lot of looking inside yourself and being honest.
I'll say that this was at a time when you were this was probably your first exposure to anything like that, right?
It truly was. This was 2003, and Houston police had to come down and teach us because we had nobody in Texas that even had taken this type of course before. And it was typical at first, a lot of PowerPoints, and then we were told there was going to be some role playing. I'm like, man, all the officers are just like, come on, we don't want to be here. But then there was a moment. There was a moment throughout the week where everything changed for me. And that was when a member from the community came in, an elderly lady talking about her own life experience, about what it's like to live with her adult son who has schizophrenia.
Oof.
And to hear her story was heart-wrenching. It made me think, this is why I joined the police department. She needs help. And she's not alone. She's not alone. There's other community members like her. And after she was done talking, and some of her statements were extremely profound, I went up to her and I asked her, I said, why did you say some of the things you said to these officers? And why have you given up on us? Why do you think we're going to show up and kill your son?
Well, I was just
why
going to
is that
say
okay with you? Yeah.
that balance of I'm afraid of this family member, but if I call the police, there's a pretty good chance they might kill this guy, this family member.
That was her exact thought. And I'm like, why would you think that? We don't do that. We just don't show up and kill people. But in her mind, in her experiences in dealing with mental health issues that police don't understand, that was her reality.
Right.
So, in talking to her afterwards, I said, well, why did you say these things? And she said, well, are you going to do something about it? And that was my aha moment. I said, well, yeah, I have no idea what, but from this point forward, I'm going to take this class 100% serious.
Right.
I'm going to learn everything I can about mental health. And then I want to start a mental health unit here in San Antonio. We've never had one. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know who's going to listen to me, but we're going to do it. And 5 years after that course, we finally got a mental health unit.
Listen,
started.
I'm surprised it took only 5 years, man, because unless somebody else comes up with the idea,
somebody that's got some stars on their collar.
That could be a long process. So 5 years, I'm not shocked. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it really was a grind. I mean, those 5 years, I began being the lead instructor for crisis intervention training. I got the material from Houston. I tweaked it to meet our resources within the community and built out this curriculum, sent it to the state to make sure, that we were good to go in case there was an audit or anything.
Right.
And they signed off on it. We began teaching this course. And then we got a new chief came in to San Antonio and he said, I want 100% of the officers trained.
Right.
I'm like, Chief, there's 2,800 officers. There's
like
4 of us. How's this going to happen? So we were able to increase the size of the unit, and we held classes every 1 week a month, of 50 officers until we got 100% of patrol trained up in crisis intervention training.
That's awesome. That's, what, I mean, kudos to the chief for understanding the importance of giving these tools. Listen, having skill sets in crisis intervention is more important than you going out with a gun.
It is, because I've used it a lot more than I've ever used my gun.
Right. I mean, listen, even I worked northwest section of Fort Lauderdale for a very long time. And I used my mouth a hell of a lot more than I used that gun. And that mouth got me out of a lot of trouble and resolved a lot of situations more so ever than pulling my firearm and waving it around like a lunatic, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting about that, and you talk about, the words you say, but in crisis intervention training, it's really not what you say. It's, are you listening?
Right.
Are you listening to the person that's in crisis, and are you truly trying to make a connection with them? Are you focused on the person and not the problem, right? Because the problem is usually emotionally charged anyway.
Sure.
So are you looking at connection over correction? And if you are, then you truly understand the essence of
Say
what the
that
training's
again,
all about.
Ernie. Say that again. Connection over, say it again.
Yeah, I mean, if you're truly trying to get connection over correction, then that's the
Connection
true
over
essence of what
correction.
the training truly is all about.
Yeah, man. And that's and I kind of before we officially launched, over the course of my 30 years, early on, I didn't see the value in de-escalating. I was annoyed that I had to show up to this house. And so I wasn't bringing my best self, right? I didn't have clearly I did have clearly defined objectives. They were to leave as quickly as possible. And really, and so there was one call, and I won't play that game with you like, oh, when I was on, but literally my partner and I threatened to throw the guy off the bridge if he, if that was our technique to deal with somebody in crisis. And I got to tell you, we ended up getting a life-saving award for that, Ernie. And had anybody ever really known what we said to that guy, we would have been ashamed. We would have been ashamed. The lack of compassion. We were like, well, we'll reverse psychology this. Oh, you want to jump? I'll push you. And it was just like, well, what the hell are we doing? And yeah,
Well, but ask yourself, how did you get there, right? Because what you're describing is not unusual for a lot of officers, and that's because you become cynical over time. And why is that? I guarantee you, if it was day one out of the academy, you wouldn't have had a thought process like that, right? You would have
sure.
been like, I got to do whatever I got to do to try to help this guy. But over time, and just the repetitiveness of this job and some of the things you see, you become cynical over time, right? And that's why, to be honest with you, when we talk about officer wellness, the leading cause of death for law enforcement officers is suicide.
Sure. Sure. No, and it's that whole if I had only known then what I know now, because I did figure some things out. I did figure out that, the act of sitting down like you and Joe did when, there was a scene during your documentary where there was a gentleman in crisis, and I think he was paranoid and he might have been schizophrenic. He was just everybody was after him. And you sat down, one or two pews away, benches away, and you could see immediately that fidgetiness, that anxieties. It just started to leave his body just by the fact of you sitting down and wanting to know how you could help him in that moment.
Yeah, and I think part of the success of that particular scene in the documentary that you're describing is, we showed up in plain clothes, which is a huge de-escalator. Now, later in the film, you'll see us show up in uniform when we're working off like an extra job for patrol,
Sure. Yeah.
and then we're faced with, a jumper on a bridge, and will these skills still translate based on what you're wearing? The answer is yes, but it takes more time because you
Right.
do have that barrier with that uniform. So the technique is there. You've got to have the right focus and mindset of how you're trying to connect to this person in crisis, right? If you're just there to check the box and, hey, we got to get you out of this courtroom, they're trying to conduct business, he's going to know that.
Right.
And he's not going to go anywhere with you. But if you're truly there and you're invested in him and you want him to feel safe, it's going to take some time.
Yeah, and you just made me think of something, Ernie. I think so much, when we talk about officer wellness, we talk about the culture of the agency. When we talk about, you being able to be a resource and reach out to somebody and to truly get to the to the point where you can help them, that culture of that agency has to want you to do that. Because I remember distinctly, like, how when are you clearing that call? You've been on it. It was a signal 20 was the code for a mentally ill, mentally disturbed how long are you going to milk that call? The sergeant would say. Which, so you're not troubleshooting, you're not transporting, you are clearing and going to the next and to the next. And it's just, we kind of create, our own problems, like, because we're going to deal with that guy later on tonight again. And so why don't we just take the time to do it right the first time?
Yeah. And you say something extremely interesting, John. The culture of policing, right? Leadership has to buy into that vision. But at what point will leadership buy into the vision of building a culture of wellness within the walls? That's what's perplexing to me. Is
Sure.
go out there and help the community, but we're not going to talk about it, and we're not going to do a whole lot within these walls.
Yeah,
And that's disturbing.
It is. And I don't, Ernie, I don't know. I read something the other day, Jordan Peterson. Um, I could read and listen to him all day because he's just so profound with some of the things he goes, why won't you take care of yourself the way you would take care of somebody else? You would never, why do you take better care of your dog than you do yourself? Well, and so the question begs, as agency leaders, why do you take better care of the community, or seemingly care more for the community than you do your own people? And that's about that, creating that environment, that culture that says, I don't care what's going on in your life. The only thing I care about is you getting well, and you being healthy mentally, physically, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that that happens.
And it's cliche. You hear it, good cops make for good neighborhoods or communities, but it's true. If you have an officer that is well physically and mentally, you're going to get a great response and good community relationships. It's when the officers are tired, they're overworked, they're exhausted, they're coming in, battling divorce and child support issues and all the things, like substance use, all the things that go along with being a human being.
Yeah.
And then trying to go out and serve the public and put all that aside for a little while, it's difficult. So there must be measures in place, right, that we can take care of the officers on the inside to make sure that the community is taken care of on the outside.
Yeah, 100%. And there's no way for there not to be spillover. If your personal life, you're an officer and your personal life's in turmoil, you are not going to be part of anyone's solution. You can't even be part of your own solution. So, and so we get into this spiral, this downward spiral. And it's just, if you and I know what the solution is, and if you and I know substantive measures that we can take, and other agency leaders have figured it out, why are we still having this conversation?
Yeah. And there are some leaders out there that are doing an incredible job, remarkable job.
Yes.
Chief Neil Gang over in Pinole, California. He built
sat down with Neil. Great guy. Just a great vision. No nonsense. Asher model.
Asher model, clone him and put him in every agency.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Doesn't have to be that hard, Ernie.
It takes true leadership and buying in the vision of wellness. And during going back to the documentary, during the filming of the documentary, we had 3 officers commit suicide. Oof. During that filming in a 16-month period. The filming took 3 years, but during that time, we lost 3 of our own to suicide.
Right.
And it's one of those things where the film took on its own journey of, instead of just, hey, 2 cops from Texas going out on mental health calls, it's but there's somebody behind that badge that's going out there making those calls. Let's get to know who they are.
Right.
And that's where you really get a good inside look behind the walls of law enforcement to see these are everyday people coming to work with everyday problems.
Right.
And so many people would, after a viewing or a screening, Joe and I would go up on stage and they were like, yeah, I never knew you guys worked this many hours, or I never knew you guys, Joe, you're talking about paying $2,500 a month in child support. Oh my God, how do you eat every month? And it's like, yeah, these are real people with real problems.
Right. And at the end of the day, an agency leader establishing a culture that truly supports its people is where we need to be with these initiatives. I think not all, right? I don't want to be naive. I think most of our problems go away when people care.
Isn't that amazing? That's a profound statement you just said, but how true is that?
Just got to care. Just got to care. Just a little bit. And if you care a little bit, I think the ripple effect, I've been blessed. I've had an opportunity to speak, and I spoke for the FBI at one of their seminars, and I had a whole room full of agency leaders. And I went after them. I said, you've got a seat at the table. You've got to, you were the people that institute change. And I said, we know the number one killer of cops is suicide. And you can take what you learned in this seminar and do something about it at your agencies. You can create an environment that makes it okay, right? To not be okay. You can do that, or you can pretend that the number one killer of cops is suicide and do nothing about it. It's on you. And if that's the case, you've got blood on your hands. And fuck if you couldn't hear a pin drop.
Yeah. And it's a shame that leaders gauge success of their agency if they have any suicides within it or not that year, right? Oh, last year we didn't have any suicides. We're doing everything great. No, you're not. I promise you're not. How many officers were suspended? How many officers did you have to fire? How many quit? I mean, like, there's other ways to measure what your culture of wellness is or is not. And nowadays, thank God, there is some technology that really has come along that agencies are investing in to try to get ahead of some of these issues. And I think that's remarkable that they're starting to do this kind of investing into their own human capital finally.
Yeah, I think that's huge. There's most important asset should be your people. And it doesn't take a lot. Doesn't take a lot to do the investing that we need. Hey, getting back to that documentary. So Kendra, man, I'm watching, and this is the night you guys are in uniform, and I'm like, damn it, of all nights, man, to have that additional layer of distrust, right? Because you right now look like every other guy that's failed her coming up to that bridge. And for the listener, you got to watch the documentary. But there's a woman who is on the other side of the rail, and she's done. She is just done. I think she had a problem with crack, and she has probably been in and out, in and out, in and out. And she was just, it's a common story amongst the people we come in contact with in our daily patrols. And Joe ended up shaking her hand and letting it go. She got to that point, and you sat down. You sat down on the sidewalk, and you said, "Hey, we're not going to come any closer, but I can't hear you. It's too noisy. Can you sit down? And I promise you, and I'm going to get you help. And you've never dealt with me before." And I just, I teared up, man. I said, yeah, that is why we're here. We are here for our fellow human being. And somebody that's in that emotional state that they're not making good decisions. They're obviously making emotional decisions. Maybe there's some narcotics in play, which is further confusing the whole situation. And the helplessness, you were able to go That wasn't edited. That was you were in about 8 minutes, give or take. You were able to get somebody from wanting to jump down onto the highway below her, who was I said, part of me was like, I know there's going to be a good ending here because this would be a shit documentary if she jumped. This is not what we're trying to accomplish here. But I am telling you the takeaways. You don't need a curriculum. You need to watch the documentary and teach and to put that out as a lesson plan on how to interact with people and how to do that to be successful in changing people's lives. Because when I saw that, her name was Kendra, and I was just like, that woman's life you saved her. Not that night, but you saved her whole entire existence because of you and Joe and your intervention. It started that evening, and it was a relationship that you built. Tell me a little bit about that, because you're not one and done, Ernie.
No. So yeah, with Kendra, that and it was kind of a nerve-wracking call. If you're an officer and you've had interactions with somebody on a bridge, the anxiety that goes along with that. If you're somebody that's never been a first responder and you're watching this documentary, your heart's going to race. And the previous person Joe and I tried to talk down jumped in front of us. The circumstances were completely different, but the thoughts were still there. The reality of what could happen was very fresh in our minds. With Kendra, you could just tell her body, she was done. She was finished. And then she said, I'm broken. And I told her, I said, yeah, you might be broken, but you're fixable, right?
Yeah.
Or even a broken crayon, right? You can color both sides of it. Like we can do this, but I need you to be a part of this solution. You have to be. We can't do it for you. So in talking with her for a while, she kind of went back and forth, and we got her to sit down. And then just like we promised her, no handcuffs. We're just going to walk you over to the car and get you some help. But the call didn't end there. When Kendra was ready to be released, I gave her my phone number and I said, give me a call. And she did. And she needed an appointment set up so she could start on get qualified for food stamps and for women's health and for Social Security benefits because she had a diagnosis. So we got her in touch with a clinician that you'll see in the documentary that worked very closely with her. I still see her today. I just took her to lunch not long ago. And this is what, 5-6 years ago now.
Right.
She asked me to help her get an ID card. She lost her ID card. So we had to go through the ID card recovery process for her. But she says, I'm tired of working in food service. I want to do something. I want to work in a regular office and be a regular person. I'm like, all right, Kendra. So we're getting her signed up to get her GED and go back to school. So she's come a long way. Like everybody else, she has struggles. She has struggled along the way. Life has not been easy for her.
Right.
She comes from an abusive background. She's lost her parents. She's had trauma throughout her whole entire life. But she understands that it's a lifelong process. And by making short-term goals that are achievable, she can be productive and have a good quality of life. So that's where we're at with her right now. I was actually I took her to lunch like 3 or 4 months ago, and the clinician that's in the documentary just happened to call me while we were having lunch. I'm like, you're never going to guess who I'm with.
That's the universe, man.
And when I told her, she goes, oh my God, I'm 2 blocks away. And she pulled in and joined us for lunch. And it was just like, we all just cried, because we were all there together like family. And it was, and there's no words, man, to hear you explain it too. Man, you had me breathless for a minute.
It's powerful, man. It's powerful. Listen, Ernie, there are very few things in this life that we do that matter. What you do matters. What you've done matters. And there's lessons for people like me and people listening to take away that, listen, you can have a life of meaning. You can be part of the solution. And I'd like to oversimplify things because that's the way I think. It just starts with caring, giving a shit about yourself and then somebody else. And yeah, that was amazing. And it was funny because it was a little touch and go in that documentary. A couple of times you and Joe were having a hard time tracking her down. And I'm like, oh man, I hope she didn't slide back into that lifestyle, and
Yeah, and I was more optimistic, I think, than Joe when it came to
oh, you
her.
think? You think?
her, her
Listen,
I choose to see the good in things,
oh
and
my God, Joe
sometimes,
was like, yeah, man, you're messing up. If we gotta come hunting you down again, oh my God. I was like, yeah, Ernie's
yeah, but
definitely good cop on this one.
yeah, but that's the importance of having a good partner is you can agree to disagree,
Yeah.
and then not become personal, and then you go on to
No,
the next one.
absolutely. Hey, Ernie, where do we go from here, man? You are the deputy division director of law enforcement, um, a new role. You're kind of like the guy that has the seat at the table now. You're not Ernie, one of two in the brand new mental health unit that just got established in San Antonio. You're the guy that people are pointing to now, I'm imagining, on, well, what are you doing about it? You're the you now.
Yeah, and that again, that's a blessing, because it's nothing I thought I could ever achieve, or nothing I ever was chasing after. It was my footsteps have always been directed, and I know that. So, as the deputy division director of the Council of State Governments, now my job is it's it's huge, but I'm in DC quite a bit. We oversee all the grants from the Department of Justice that go out to law enforcement agencies that are now starting to build mental health units or co-responder units or community responder units. We're trying to find ways to have law enforcement integrate with 988, the suicide hotline call, with 911, and how does that process work,
This
and
is
what
on a
does.
this is a national initiative, Ernie.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Holy
we're national
smokes,
level.
brother.
So yeah, we're grantees of the Department of Justice. So we work very closely with the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and really trying to set these programs up for success in communities that want to start these types of programs.
That's excellent. Now let me ask you, and in your new capacity here, is there is there talk amongst the officials in that circle about the mental health concerns within the law enforcement profession?
There are. In fact, this year, one of our deliverables to the Department of Justice is to have a community of practice, a 3-part seminar or webinar about officer wellness and the cultures within agencies. So I'm looking forward in partnering with some subcontractors on putting together the best community of practice we're going to put out this year, and it's all going to do with officer wellness.
That's wonderful to hear because um, the challenges again. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. If we're talking about having healthy officers being involved in the community and being the outreach and embracing this initiative, that only works if they're healthy. That only works if they have their affairs in order. So, well, that's
And,
that's
and
really great to hear.
Yeah, and John, the dynamic is changing because when you start to build these types of programs and initiatives where you're bringing in civilian clinicians, right, to ride with law enforcement, well, who's looking after them now, right? When is the last time a clinician talked to somebody face to face on a bridge or saw somebody complete a suicide? It's the dynamic is changing. So we also have to take into account our friends and our collaborators or collaborative stakeholders within these different agencies and organizations as we continue to grow and partner with new agencies all the time.
That's an amazing initiative, and it's so good to listen. Not blowing smoke, man, but I'm glad that you're in charge of it. It's so often, right? So I mean, so often, people get put in charge of things, and their background doesn't justify them holding that seat. Maybe it was a political favor. I'm going to make her. Oh, Stevens, yeah, he donated a couple $100K to the. We're going to make him the director of NASA or something. And you've got no, the closest you've come to NASA was a couple bottle rockets on the 4th of July, but we're going to
Yeah.
make you the guy for NASA. But this seems like it's just a really smart, excellent fit. You're putting a guy with passion and knowledge in the chair.
Yeah, it is a great fit, but I'm only one person. My team is amazing. The organization in and of itself is a think tank group of just brilliant people. They really do a great job day in and day out, really looking for the best fit for communities to be not only proactive, but to be successful and sustainable over time.
I like
And
that
they,
word sustainable, man. And we can
uh,
we can do anything once right. It's we gotta duplicate it. It's gotta be sustainable, whether it's your own affairs or initiatives that are generated by the government. Yeah, man.
yeah, it's building these robust cross systems of care. These frameworks that can help other agencies not have to reinvent the wheel. And that's it really is all about the Justice Center and the people that work there. Again, I'm just one person. My team is amazing.
That's great that they're giving you that latitude to build out a team that gets the job done. This is one of those areas, man, that we can't afford to fail in. And
No, it's the timing is right. The conversation is right. What's going on over the last 2-3 years in law enforcement, that the broken trust, the questionable um, thoughts of is law enforcement still a noble profession? You hear all this, and the answer is yes, it is. We are a noble profession, and we're gonna reconnect the gaps, and we're gonna show you that together we will build stronger communities.
100%. I want to be respectful of your time, Ernie. Mental Health and De-escalation: A Guide for Law Enforcement Professionals. Ernest Stevens and Nicholas Ruggiero. Great book. I loved what I loved about it is that it gave you enough to be effective, but not so much that it would paralyze you into not knowing what to do or say.
You summed it up perfect. The book is written as a guidebook for law enforcement professionals. There's everything in there from a basic understanding of active listening, which is an exact cookie cutter of what the FBI negotiator systems use. I put some federal law in there about EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment Active Labor Act.
Yep.
But more importantly, um, the book, what was amazing about the book was it went number one within 3 days, which I'm like, who is buying this book? I know a bunch of cops aren't spending money on this book. Come on. But then I started getting emails. Hospitals, treatment facilities, schools, teachers, educators, parents. Hey, thank you for writing this. I didn't know this is why my daughter acts the way she does. I should have known how to respond better. I mean, I heard so many different
Yeah.
types of feedback that it was one of those things that I didn't want to do. And now that it's done and over with and has had success, I'm glad it did.
Yeah. I mean, it's just some basic things in interaction. You sound, you seem, I hear. Not, I understand. Oh, you do. Oh, you do understand. Oh, no, no, don't. You don't understand. You don't understand. You can't understand. So that whole just keeping people from those missteps that are, that once made, they can undo all that great work that you've
Yeah.
done up until that point, and then you start back actually at a deficit. You don't even start back at zero. You start with a minus because I started to trust you, and then you said something that that's what those other guys said, and
Yeah.
now I got to start over.
Yeah, they're diminishing skills. What I wrote in the book, they're good, effective communication skills, um, really to help an officer that either doesn't have the background in responding to mental health calls or just doesn't have the training or the opportunity to go to training. That I hope this is something you can put in your, your work bag, and on your break, maybe, get through 5 or 6 pages of it, and, hopefully it'll help you out.
Yeah, and for the listener, I read this poolside in about 2 hours, just went through it, and it's light, it's easy, it's foundational, and and if you are doing some of the things, it'll kind of confirm for you that read the reason why you're being successful in talking with people. Um, Ernie, I usually like to ask the guests before we wrap up, you know, there's a man or a woman uh either riding into work or on their way home, and maybe they've had one of those nights, or you can speak directly to those folks, our people we care about. What's something that you'd like to share with them, a thought, something that adds value to their life for hearing it than not, that you would like to just share with the listener?
Yeah, well, speaking from a retiree point of view now, for a long time, I put off my own mental health and my own self care. And over time, that will take a toll on you and your family and your support system. So if you're early on in your career or you're late into it, approaching retirement, it's not too late to focus in on yourself and understand the importance of self care. There's a very short acronym that you can practice each day. It's called GEBY, GEBY. The G stands for gratitude. So I have an app on my phone, a gratitude app, and I list 3 things I'm grateful for each day and why. The E stands for exercise, and that doesn't mean you have to join CrossFit. It just means about 20 minutes a day. Get your heart rate up and get moving a little bit, get some exercise. The B stands for breakfast, or really just something nutritional, like something green on your plate, like a vegetable each day, but some type of good nutrition. And then the Y stands for you. Do something for you each day that you find comfort and relaxation in. So if you can practice GEBY, start that, try it for a few weeks and see if that helps, helps your mindset and just your overall self-care.
That's awesome, man. Because, unfortunately, we spend a lifetime in a career of taking care of others, and that's often done at the expense of ever taking care of ourselves. That's a great message. Ladies and gentlemen, Ernie Stevens, brother, I've been like a stalker in the shadows watching you. I'm just so great to finally meet you, and all the work that you've done, that you continue to do, man. A big thank you from all of us here in the first responder community for everything that you've been doing and continue to do. Ladies and gentlemen, Ernie Stevens.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure, brother.